Okay. Okay, welcome to the Ceremon Valley Democratic Club. We have a wonderful meeting planned with Dr. Brian Levin speaking on hate and extremism. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brody Hilp, and I'm here with Rick Adler. We serve as co-presidents. Also with us is Cecilia Manalga, our club board member and very important Zoom administrator. And we want to remind you to please be respectful and courteous in chat. Well, this has been a big month. It was Pride Month, which celebrates lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender pride. Pride Month began after the Stonewall riots, a series of gay liberation protests in June of 1969. And Juneteenth was Monday. As you probably know, enslaved people in the territories of the US had not heard about the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863. And it was not until several years later, on June 19th, 1865, that Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, to let 250,000 Black slaves know that they were free. But true freedom and equality remain elusive for these citizens and other ethnic groups. As states across America are now passing legislation that makes it increasingly difficult for them to make their voices heard in voting booths and ballot boxes. So we have a great deal of work to do. Please look in chat for ways to send postcards and do phone banking. And our club did not meet in May, but that month honored Asian Pacific Islanders. So how fortuitous that tonight we will hear our speaker talk about hate and extremism against these various groups that we celebrate. We are honored to have our speaker, Dr. Brian Levin. Not only is Dr. Levin a professor of criminal justice at Cal State San Bernardino, but he is also the director of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism, also at that campus. His research interests are counterterrorism, hate crime, constitutional law, criminal law. He earned his bachelor's degree with multiple honors in history from the University of Pennsylvania. He then went on to Stanford Law School for his law degree, where he was the recipient of an award, the Block Civil Liberties Award. In the 1990s, he was a legal director for the Center for the Study of Ethnic and Racial Violence. He was also an associate director of legal affairs for the Southern Poverty Law Center's Klan Watch and Militia Task Force in Montgomery, Alabama. Dr. Levin has been a professor for more than 20 years, and during that time, he and his team have participated in the drafting and endorsement of numerous legislative bills, and they have provided legislative analysis and have conducted training sessions for not only legislators, but law enforcement, community groups, and academia. Dr. Levin is also a licensed attorney with the State Bar and also with the Supreme Court Bar. He was the principal author of a key brief in the U.S. Supreme Court case of Wisconsin versus Mitchell in 1993. He's also co-authored the book, The Limits of Dissent, which is about the Constitution and domestic terrorism. So we are honored to have Dr. Levin, who is a prominent worldwide expert on hate and extremism. Thank you, Dr. Levin, for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Can I just go home now? I don't think I can top that. Although I do want to point out that the Goldbergs and the Goldwares snuck an extra spouse onto the couch without paying the extra 50 cents. So I don't want to cause trouble within the local chapter here, but no, the more the merrier. Thank you so much. What an honor. I get these wonderful requests from the best people. Earlier this month, I spoke to graduate students at Johns Hopkins and in their School of Public Health. There is such a need for civic engagement across a spectrum. And I told him, I said, look, you know, I have relatives who are involved in the research and the health sciences. And, you know, this is the era that we are in, where we are now seeing extremism touch beyond the traditional boundaries of what's in hate crime, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, and alike. We're now seeing teachers get threatened and harassed. We're seeing health officials get harassed, election officials, journalists. These are touchstones of a civic democracy. So at the one hand, we see a more traditionally bigoted and discriminatory type of target selection, but now we're seeing some institutional stuff. So anyway, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be with the party that when I was a young child talked about don't trust anyone over 30. But just coming back from DC and dealing with some of the wonderful policymakers there, I'm going to take you into some of the latest information that we've done. Indeed, you know, it's interesting that Supreme Court brief. Well, the first thing I did as a lawyer was write a brief to defend the constitutionality of hate crime laws, and I still believe in them, but they're not getting enforced. And we'll talk about various myths later, and I'd love to take some questions. But it was exactly 30 years ago this month that the New York Times quoted me saying that hate crimes could be very deterrable, especially if we got the word out to victims, and we're still doing that now. So from the Hate Crime Statistics Act in 1990, all the way through to the COVID-19 hate crime legislation that was passed, after I developed the center as well has been involved with this with some wonderful, wonderful folks, and it all comes around. In other words, what I'm saying to you is, you know, there was a marvelous saying that one of our graduates at Cal State, and you spelled Bernardino wrong. So, you know, someone from public affairs should call you within the next 5 minutes. They're on this. But I don't use a publicist. I don't do independent fundraising. All this is not about satisfying constituency or fundraising. I used to work at a wonderful charity, but I like the academic and public policy side of things. We keep everyone honest. And the thing is, for the most part, they are. And you're going to see why some of this stuff is terrifying. But if we can go to the next slide, that would be great. And that's 37 years. So I left out the photo of me saving the Klansman because that only gets me threats. But it's important to speak out, not only with opinion, and of course there's an ethical duty for these things. Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's from 1987, where I think it says, I hope you will have the time and resources available to you to do this research in the future, or something to that effect. So that was 87. And we still need this data, and there are still limitations and flaws with it. But one of our graduates said, beautiful people see beauty in all people. And it's particularly resonant because she was gunned down in the San Bernardino terror attack. So a lot of the things that, and again, by the way, can I criticize the San Ramon Valley Democrats for a second? Because of a budget cut, they got the only commissioner on the new commission who's not a Democrat to speak before you tonight. By the way, I am not speaking on behalf of the commission. They have their hands full with all the hate in the state right now without having to worry if my dad jokes don't resonate. So let's move on to the next slide. Prejudice is an attitude that's an evaluative process. It has three components: the emotional, the belief, and the behavioral. Not everyone who gets emotional or even has certain levels of beliefs will go out and commit a hate crime. Now, there's a difference between a hate crime and a hate incident, and it's often conflated. And if we have time in the hoax section, we'll do it. I'd love to take questions if anybody has any. But stereotypes, these untruths or primarily untrue labels whole groups of people as legitimate targets of aggression. So if we could go on to the next slide. I see political people. Anyway, and by the way, like what I looked up in Merriam-Webster about woke, and it says being concerned about social justice, or sometimes it says having a great concern. Okay, is that bad? But since we're a political group tonight, or you are, I'm not. I'm a lifelong independent, particularly because I want policymakers and people of goodwill across the political spectrum to know that I will give them an objective and independent type of analysis. Look at this here. Every election year, hate crimes have gone up. And what we found, I'm not going to give you the number because I was nice enough to back up my talk by a week, and our full report isn't out yet. But suffice it to say, in major American cities, we looked at 40 of them. Hate crimes were up last year. By the way, hold on, NorCal, San Jose down, San Francisco down. That's good. Sacramento looks like multi-year highs. We'll see what happens when the AG's office comes out with their official data. The local data will sometimes differ from the official data we see with the state data. LA, which hit multi-year highs in 2022, they count differently. So when you look at our report in 3 weeks from now, you see the AG, we will have vastly different numbers because the city of LA counts by victim, whereas the state and the FBI and most other agencies count by event. So the horrible Tree of Life massacre was one event with 11 homicides, just so we can get in the data here. But look at this. One of the things we found, and if you look at the first year there, 91 was really a preseason. You had low agency participation rates. But either way, hate crimes in election years vastly outpace the increase that we see. It's a minimal, it's almost a flat line in non-presidential election years. So just, I knew we were talking to a political crowd tonight. I am not, but I am happy to have been appointed by a wonderful governor who I never met, but on the basis of a wonderful Democratic state assembly person and a 28-year-old staffer who, after we got defeated, no joke, to get this commission off the ground, she said, I know your heart's into it, and I know all the groups that you represent. We're going to push this through another term, and I will do this. I'm so committed. And God bless her. This is the kind of people that's civically engaged, and this is why it's an honor. It's a privilege to talk to you. A lot of these speakers out there, they have publicists, they get paid a lot, you know, that's for a whole nother time. This has been a money loser my whole career, and gladly so, because what I've gotten back in getting things done and associating with the best of America, you could never put a price tag, although I didn't hand in my forms to my university in time, so I'm out a couple of grand. But that's okay, because you know what? Everyone involved tonight who's civically engaged, you're here, takes time off from your families, you go to events, and particularly now for the LGBTQI community, as I said in a national Zoom today, it is important for the non-gay community to speak out, the first thing I did as a lawyer was represent the major LGBTQ groups across the West Coast and some national ones, along with Reverend C.T. Vivian. That's a privilege of a life. Meeting with you tonight is the privilege of a life. You know why? It's not wasted. Just like when they tell you somebody calls an assembly office, you better pay attention because these people are civically engaged. So thank you, every one of you who are here tonight. Let's go to the next slide. I can't thank you all night. Look at this. This is not out yet because I just have such admiration for these civically involved people. Look at this. So we broke it apart for the election year increases. So if you include 92, but again, you had a couple of outlier things. One is initial collection year was the year before, low agency participation rate. Next year, you had the Rodney King trials and the civil disorders out of that. But that still organically happened. So anyway, if you include 92 with the artificially low turnout the year before, as far as agency participation, is an 11.4% increase. Start with 96, it's a 6.6% increase. And I believe actually that should be through 2021 because we had a big increase in 2021 and 2020 that I'll talk about. Let's roll the next slide. Want to make sure I have a half an hour for this, right? Okay, that's a lot of what you need to know. Okay, look at that. We hit an FBI enumerated, this is FBI data here, record in 2021. Let's move to the next slide. Here's your definition. Remember, there are non-criminal incidents, and our friends, for instance, at the ADL, which just came out with a report today, both of our data are in the New York Times today. And what I like about what we do is, I don't like check, I don't like, look over in the desk next to me during the chemistry test here. We do our stuff independent. We don't fundraise around our stuff. We don't take money from some of the wonderful groups that are out there. There's some really interesting conclusions that we get oftentimes before the Fed. So last year we found like a 29% increase. FBI numbers were 31% increase. By the way, their press release says 11.6%. That is not true. It doesn't use the same consistent data line that we're using. Go with us. You know what? Even the major newspapers wouldn't do it because that's what they put in their press release. They keep having to revise. For the last 2 years, they've come out with 4 releases because they leave out whole states. So we get it first because we look at the cities directly. 9 out of the 10 years, it correlates. Sometimes it doesn't, and I'll tell you why. But that's the definition that you have. It must be a crime. Other advocacy and wonderful groups, Stop AAPI Hate, ADL, CARE, they count non-criminal incidents, which I think is very important. And that's something that is getting done in the research area. We have to count them all. But it's also important that we count crimes. Let's move on to the next one. So I don't have a lot of time tonight. That is California. Okay, now don't go tweet this off. California was really split in 2022 with the major cities. A lot of them were down. We looked at, I think, about 10 of them that had the data. LA multi-decade high, Sacramento multi-decade high, but San Jose, San Francisco down, San Diego down. So that's good news. But many places in the OC not down. So, but what we found for 2022, this is through 2021, the AG's office is going to release theirs soon, end of June, first week or so of July. We found flat. It was only up by four incidents, criminal incidents. So it's very hard to make a call with that. When you see that, you just go, okay. So any larger city or set of them could really drive things one way or the other, but it's going to be somewhere in that area. In other words, we're not going to see a significant decrease, although we have seen a cresting with some types of bias categories that have gone up double and triple digits, cresting. You'll see what I mean. Let's go to the next slide. This is a hate pyramid done by Spectrum in the UK. Our friends at ADL also did one, and were very kind many years ago. I've been in this business so long that I now have more experience heading an anti-hate organization, just because it's been changed, right? I've been around so long, than the head of the ADL, AJC, and Southern Poverty Law Center combined. But I wish them all a 20-some-odd career in this stuff, because I recommend 70s music and pints of ice cream. But as you can see, not every behavior is criminal or even civilly actionable, and we have to work on rooting this out, root and branch. Let's go to the next slide, because we have, oh my goodness, what happened here? Sorry, when it got transferred over. Let me just explain this to you. That shouldn't be looking like that. This is not correct. But the order is correct. African American, Jewish, and gay male. This is not correct. We've updated as we get more data in, and also we present it in a way that doesn't make you feel like you need to have a new prescription set of glasses. But 50% of hate crimes in major American cities last year, we looked at 40, including the top 10. 50% were three groups: African American first, around 22%, then Jewish, then gay male. Yeah, somewhere around these, but it's going to vary a little bit. Then we had about 24%, another quarter of the pie, clustered in anti-white, anti-Asian, and anti-Latino, followed by about 7% with anti-transgender. Let's move on. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah. So this is what we had when we combined for 2022, just the cities that we had the best data for. And as you can see, a little bit more target against African Americans, a bit more target against gay males, Latinos, then surpass Jews. But here's the thing: California is over 39% Latino compared to about 18-19% for the rest of the country. So that's why we see this. If we, and you see anti-Asian, we in California, we are less African American proportionally, less white, more Latino, more Asian. So that's why the demographics affect how offenses occur, because of just how the proportion of people that are residents are. We can move on to the next one. Sorry about those. Thank you. One that actually worked. This is what the FBI looked like for the last decade. So 30% African American, Jewish 12%, anti-gay male 11. Very similar. You see that? Very similar into how that is. Anti-white, notice, but remember, whites are now, non-Latino whites are now 59% and declining of the American population. African Americans 13.6%, Jewish about 2%, Muslim a little over 1%. It varies. CARE has their own estimates, which are a bit higher. But one of the things that you'll see, if we can move to the next slide, is we have shifts. And this is what happened last year. I'm not going to give you the exact numbers because we're not completely out with it. Some of it was in the Times today. But look at this. In the prior year, 2021, who was being attacked the most? At least in the major cities in our survey, very similar to what we had with the FBI. Anti-Jewish, we showed more, but Jews are twice as clustered in American cities as they are in the nation as a whole, about 4.4% of the 21 largest cities rather, versus 2% for the whole country rather. So last year, anti-Asian, we showed a 224% rise, over 146% rise the year before. FBI figures were more muted, but still up. We had a record anti-Asian in 2021. We saw a decline, but even with the decline last year, San Francisco, big decline. But look what happened. You know, we basically had every elderly Asian person when could be done getting an escort of younger people. I mean, literally that kind of mobilization. We also had one offender who committed 27 of them. Someone who is possibly mentally ill and a veteran. So, you know, mental health is such a big part of this. But last year, anti-Asian #1, anti-Jewish #3, anti-gay male, that's right, anti-Asian #1, biggest increaser. #2, anti-Jewish. This is for 2021. #3, anti-gay male, and then we saw big increases also in anti-Muslim, anti-Latino, and anti-white. Last year, different story. Last year, a lot of the groups that had the biggest increases were also had the biggest slice of the pie, right? Not the only group that's getting attacked a lot relative to proportion are Jews for last year. They're in the top 5 of the biggest increases. Anti-other race, so anti-Black, which was up low double digits in 2021, was up about 46% nationally in 2020. June 2020 was the worst month for anti-Black hate crimes since record been kept. It correlates to George Floyd social justice protests. But last year, as we've seen an increase in legislation relating to anti-LGBTQ and conflictual demonstrations, and it just keeps going. June is horrible. Now is horrible. Literally, we haven't been able to count them all yet. But in any event, last year, 3 of the 5 biggest moves, LGBTQ mixed, significant double digits. Gender non-conforming, similar, that includes drag. And anti-transgender, about 28%. So we know from our research, and this research won, and it shouldn't have, but it's okay, you know. But I think it's because it was socially relevant. But we have 24,000 scholars in the CSU, and some of them were like working on cures for COVID. All right. But that being said, I think it was good that we were able to show correlations so we can influence public policy and make sure, you know, our research was used on the floor of the Senate by both parties with respect to the passage of the COVID-19 Act, which is now funding a hotline here in California that was implemented by a former Democratic president appointee. The world comes around to do good. Get your fingerprints on it. I'm with a crowd who does. That's why I'm so thrilled to be with you. Keep doing the good. Don't stop it at the meetings. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, this shows 2022 versus 2021 for various groups, and you can see anti-Black decline. Yeah, wait, this is hold on. You know what? Let's move on. I don't think this is correct. Let's move it through this. I don't like this one. Here we go. This is 21 versus 2022. So we had some improvements. Let's move forward. But overall hate crime up double in the top 10 cities than it was with respect to the country as a whole. Let's move on. This is an incorrect slide. Don't show it. This is correct. Thank you. Boy, okay, here we go. This shows you who was attacked most in the major cities. New York City hit a record for anti-Jewish going back to 91. But in the next largest cities, we saw anti-Black until you get to Dallas, which anti-gay, you get the idea. Anti-Black was about number 1 in 2/3 of the cities in 2021, just barely over half in 2022. So we're seeing a diversification. That's why you're seeing other race, right? And anti-gay male, anti-lesbian cresting a little bit, but that homophobic violence isn't evaporating, it's just being redirected. Let's go next slide. Oh, I gotta wrap it up. But here's what I'll wrap it up with then. Remember talking about election years? Look at this. Hate speech and hate posts online correlated chronologically to increases in hate crimes we saw on the street. And we also see massacres around a lot of this stuff. So we call this stochastic terrorism. So when someone is identified as a legitimate target of aggression within a subculture or interlocking subcultures, that's what you get. We're going to put out an advisory. We have to stand with the LGBTQ community. I've been doing that for the 37 years I've been in this business. Let me tell you something else. Sorry about some hard truths. When I was in Alabama in the early 90s, all the so-called progressives shut their door on me when I was trying to get state legislation to protect the LGBTQ community. I will never turn my back on that and that community that I love so very much. And now we're at a point where we have a president, we have a governor, and I am not a Democrat. This is not about politics. It should not take some kind of political affiliation to say that taking children who have gender dysphoria and setting them up for derision, ridicule, discrimination, and violence is something that should cross party lines. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And we see demagogues who are attacking these beautiful people. And I'm not allowed to, I gotta be careful, I'm on tape. I'm not allowed to speak on behalf of the commission because open meetings laws, I can't even reply all everybody. But I'm on a wonderful subcommittee with one of the true geniuses of our state, Professor Shirin Sanar of Stanford Law School. I couldn't have been more thrilled that she is on the commission along with everyone else. It's really a beautiful mix. But I will tell you this, because now I'm speaking personally. Whatever lever I have with regard to running a center, we always try to go to where we are seeing vulnerabilities being exploited. That's why after 9/11, we put in significant research with regard to protecting the Muslim and Arab community. We did it again on national television when I called Bill Maher Islamophobe. I got the most harassment and threats I ever got doing that. But we have to stand with particularly communities that are under attack. And the LGBTQ community today and their allies are under attack. We are having on the cover of our thing, we're calling it Pride, Prejudice, and Politics. We have bomb threats, firebombing attempts, threats against LGBTQ civil rights workers, school boards being places where the LGBTQ community is being attacked. So I am proud to have always stood by this beautiful community, just like I have the spectrum of beautiful communities that I have. But I will guarantee you that in whatever position I have in public life, I will never shy away from standing up, particularly for children. What a disgrace. So that is one of the reasons why I am not a Democrat. This is something that crosses political affiliation when it is ethically applied. And we are living in a world now where we have demagogues who happen to be from whatever parties. We have them on the left with regard to COVID deniers. So conspiracism, stereotyping not only hurts individuals, it degrades democracy. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me the time to speak to you who are so special and civically engaged. We shouldn't have celebrities in this business. Everybody's got to roll up their sleeves and make sure that the most vulnerable among us, whether it's one year it's Muslim people or Muslim and Arab people, another year it might be Jewish people, Black people, we must stand with them. And that is why today it is of great urgency that we will be doing something with respect to advisories. But also, I want you to protect yourself because we're seeing it leach into people who are involved in politics and elections, teachers, public health officials, and others. Thank you so much. It has been no joke. When I speak to these engaged groups, it is the privilege of my life. And thank you so much. I'm happy to take questions, particularly about some of the myths that are out there, if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Levin. That was some wonderful analysis and quite interesting. And we're going to take questions now. Does anyone have a question? You can raise your hand. Yes, Richard?
Yeah, Professor, what are your feelings on the generational change that we have young voters now? Are you heartened by that, or are you, I mean, what are your feelings? Are we headed in the right direction, or it seems like it's a constant battle?
They don't trust us, and they don't trust the institutions of democracy, even on the left. I'm going to tell you something. I don't usually like to talk about this too much, but I'm someone who studied this stuff, not only like, at the courts and the research libraries in Congress, but I actually, interview folks, go to these demonstrations, you interview a Klansman or the Proud Boys, right? It's incredibly important to know how these people think. And what I'm telling you is, when they were going to beat the Grand Dragon to death, and I stood over this schnook, and I got attacked by the hard left because I said that one of the principles, the moral principles of the civil rights struggle was nonviolence. And there were 1.2 million impressions against that. You have 10% on the left saying that political violence is acceptable. Now it's 3 times more on the right, and there's no equalizing this. The overwhelming majority of fatalities are done by far-right white supremacists. However, for the first time in years in 2020, we saw 3 in the Pacific Northwest done in these autonomous zones, and they were done. 2 of them were Black kids that were killed. Okay, so what we're seeing is, the whole punch a Nazi thing. We are not reaching the hard left, or even the progressives, who think that capitalism is irretrievable. Our system of government is so entrenched in racial supremacy and colonialism that is unsalvageable. So what I'm saying to you is, we need the Obamas, the Newsoms, and whoever we could say on the well, there was a Republican candidate for governor who got trounced, but put together the Global Compact to Eradicate Hate. We have to reach to the center, and that doesn't mean giving up. That doesn't mean giving up on trans kids. But what it does say is that we also want to preserve the institutions and processes of a peaceful, civil, and civic democracy, which is exactly what you all are about. And what I'm saying is, there are a lot of people who don't, who when I would tell people like, oh, I'm so thrilled I'm talking to the Democratic Club, they would say they're just a bunch of shills for the establishment. Can you believe that? Yeah. That's where we're at. We are so fragmented in our socio-political discourse. That's where you can get like Latino white supremacists. In other words, it's an a la carte meal. And one of the things that we're seeing on both sides is an opting out on the communal institutions of a pluralistic democracy, whether it's academia, whether it's journalism, whether it's political parties. And that's something that we're also going to have to deal with, along with disinformation. But thank you so much. I'm sorry about giving the bad news. I am not saying that I believe that's true of the Democratic Party, but I'm saying that there are a lot of people who just don't understand that folks like you who helped get this commission passed, who helped protect trans kids. I know it doesn't just happen by accident. It happens by buying into a system where you're not going to get everything you want, but you believe in peaceful and civic dialogue. And that's why I am so thankful for the invitation tonight.
Thank you.
Cindy Darling, you have a question?
Yeah. So we're struggling Walnut Creek City Council has had anti-Semitic callers calling in the last couple meetings, as well as people flying banners over Highway 24 and over Ignacio Valley Road. And we've been lucky, we've had activists who have come and spoken in favor of love over hate. But are we just feeding their desire for people to notice them? How big a deal do we make about it?
Make a big deal about you. Make a big deal like Todd Gloria in San Diego got together the community and signed a mayoral declaration. But the other thing that I think you need to do is make sure that there's coordination in your local community from the folks in the school board to the Human Relations Commission. By the way, if you need mediators or some assistance, California Civil Rights Department are wonderful. California Association of Human Relations Organizations, who I had the privilege of representing twice before the US Supreme Court, Amici Wise. There's a lot of resources, but in other words, you make your own news. That doesn't mean but you can say we stand against anti-Semitism, but you don't have to reference what the incident was.
Just focus on, we have a lot of values within our city that we're promoting, and just focus on those and say, we as a community stand for this.
Yes, and have a cop there. I know
we always have a cop in the back.
The hard left doesn't like it, but I'm going to tell you something. We have a okay, here's some of the biggest not truths. Hate crime laws don't act as a deterrent. Well, actually, we only have one study, and that's Wexler and Marks, and it showed that in Boston, after they got a police hate crime unit and enacted the Massachusetts Civil Rights Act of 1979, they dropped hate crimes from just about 700 to under 200. And let me tell you how bad it was in Boston. People talk about the South. The current mayor of Boston, I believe, had to have a motorcade because they were throwing cinder blocks at the buses. And there's a Pulitzer Prize winning photo of a black man being gored by an American flag near City Hall. That's how bad it was in Boston. Who's that Hollywood star? He was convicted of a hate crime. What was his name up in Boston? So it says, but there's only one study. That being said, there's also evidence that it's often being used in the wrong way. And there's also evidence that it's hardly being used at all. When I went to the LADA, when he said he was going to pull all hate crime enhancers, I sent a letter to his office, said, I will petition the California Attorney General to come in for every hate crime felony to prosecute it over you if you don't reverse yourself. But you know how many cases they had in the pipeline for 10 million people in LA County? 3. 2 were attempted murders, throat slashing of transgender people. 1 was a Nazi attack with a metal shovel on a black motorist and his passenger, who were terrified. If there was ever a time that we should have felonies, that's 3 of them. But that being said, we're not using hate crime laws. A lot of this stuff is really symbolic. That's why it's important, though, for these groups, for these folks like the Proud Boys or the Patriot Front or NSC that show up so brazenly. You have a cop in that background, and that shows that, you're gonna like knock over a trans kid, or you're gonna punch a preacher. This is things that we've actually seen. You will get arrested. I have no problem. So that makes me the most conservative wherever I'm at. That's okay. I think everything has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Though as a matter of policy, I completely agree with the progressives who say this is not an issue of incarcerating our way out of it. This is about community resilience and coordination. So I don't want to appear like one of these like total folks that you see on some of these incorrect networks. But don't throw out every instance, because what we've seen over the years, you didn't see the slide, these hate crimes are getting more violent. And we have a multiplicity of offenders. We have everything from young teenagers with no criminal records and shallow prejudices, all the way up to neo-Nazis who want to use extreme violence against vulnerable people. And they have criminal records. There are some people who don't belong on the streets. But for the most part, I do actually agree with the progressives on this, because most hate crimes, I think you really have a lot of room for rehab and for some kind of counseling as opposed to carcerating. but
Well,
thank you.
we don't even know who these guys are. They're just anonymous on Zoom. First name, no phone number. You know,
Well, hate speech is constitutionally protected unless it's under certain circumstances relating to like jury service or discrimination in employment. But generally, if someone in a public forum in a non-threatening way wanted to say something horrible about Jews or gay people, that is constitutionally protected, and you might not like this, but I fully believe in constitutional protection for non-criminal hate speech.
yeah.
I just don't believe they should have a forum on major news channels.
Yeah, our attorney has schooled us in that, and so we're struggling.
We're with you.
Thank you. Laura Halprin.
Hello, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad I'm here at the same time. There is such a strong and relentless anti-trans momentum happening in Bay Area school districts targeting school board races. And it seems like those the far right candidates are well funded. There's a lot of coordination, and the more progressive candidates seem to be really coming from the community. They don't have necessarily political experience. And so I really am anxious about how we can support those candidates. I mean, some of them are being doxxed and threatened, and you know, how can we protect them? For the most part, I think there's a lot of community support, but it's getting drowned out by the relentlessness of the anti-trans activists. So couldn't you give us any advice about how to push back in the most practical? You talked about community resilience and coordination, just like a, 4-point do this would be really helpful.
Well, thank you. The first thing I would do is make sure you coordinate across groups, right? So you want to have a showing where you have someone with a clerical collar there. You want to, and get publicity. The other thing, I mean, did you see what happened with Moms for Liberty today with their one of their Indiana chapters?
No.
Oh, they put a wonderful quote by Adolf Hitler up. So do your research. Human Rights Campaign, SPLC, I think it's, there's another group, National Center for Transgender Equality. All these folks have done a lot of homework already. Equality California is a marvelous group. So what I would do is, you don't have to reinvent the whole wheel, but coordination both laterally and then more, when I say laterally, in your local area, but also coordination with major groups at the state level and major groups at the national level. One other quick thing, just today, Congressman Takano from Southern California, my area actually, reintroduced legislation to provide equality for the LGBTQI community, he tried to say. I have the flu, so you got to give me like an A- no matter what. Because we have a flu and we have someone in the hospital at the same time, and you guys moved up by a week before we were even, so we're literally giving you our latest data before we're supposed to let that pie sit for a while, but we gave it all to you. Main thing, coordinate with those who have experience with this. They have local toolkits, things like that. I would also look to local human relations commissions. And also, if there are threats and things like that, California Civil Rights Department. And if there's an actual hate incident, doesn't have to be criminal. They actually have a portal and a hotline. And I want to make sure that I get their number correct. Now, this is not for political organized. This is for if there's actual acts of discrimination and intimidation. There's a difference between saying, you're ugly socialists and threatening someone. By the way, I don't say that. That was just a pedagogic example. Please, I don't need to be in the local papers. Just give me just give me 1 second. I want to make sure I give you the exact correct number. Yeah, 833-866. No hate. 883. So it's 8338. No hate. Oh, I should just said that.
Okay.
8338. You know what? That's my little my little spiel now. I never got to develop a brand over the last 27 years running a center. So here you go. But if there's an actual incident, remember, half the incidents, these conflictual incidents, our friends at the ADL found like involved extremist groups. So look for these groups like the Proud Boys and these other folks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you a question. You mentioned a commission. I want to know the name of that commission. And also, has there been any research, or do you have any ideas of why do you think the hate crimes have increased over the last few years?
Oh, sure. We have the California Commission on the State of Hate, and we had 5 appointees from the governor, and hats off to him. I don't contribute to political campaigns. I have not ever. I don't go to rallies. I don't sign petitions. It's really important that an independent voice be on a commission like this, frankly. Not that I don't love Democrats. I'm in love with one now, and she's not on the screen. But but I really think it's important that there be people who, you know, when I get calls from Republicans too, and they have their churches burned, and I will work for them if they're people of goodwill, as much as I work for anyone else, because that is what you all are. Even though you have a party affiliation, I can tell by the vigor in your substance and the passion in your temperament. So the commission, I worked for many years to get it passed pre-pandemic. We failed the first time. Assembly member Bloom from Southern California, who's not even in politics anymore, he and a wonderful, committed young person pushed it through. We were devastated, but it was a grassroots thing. We had folks from the Muslim community, the Jewish community, disability community, folks that sometimes even want to talk to each other. So this is what's so important. And we really have the California Angels. The caliber of talent that we have associated with this commission. When you look at a governor back east who appoints a quack who's anti-science with respect to COVID, and all these other anti-education folks, we have PhDs from Stanford, JDs from Yale, other folks who don't have that kind of academic pedigree, but were working for decades in the gay rights struggle. It is the most wonderful ambrosia that I couldn't have orchestrated it if I could, a beautiful assortment. But we're divided into subcommittees, and mine is the data and research, and we hope to influence public policy. So that's what the commission is. What have we seen? Listen to this. I went back and I looked at the major cities that we looked at, like the top 10. It's more than doubled in the last decade. Hate crimes bottomed in around 2014 in the Obama administration, believe it or not. But we were on a reasonable decline down. Now all bets are off. The same kind of social science data points that we're seeing that are affecting civic democracy, people who want to vote, people who think violence is a legitimate way to have political disputes, all kinds of things. By the way, I want to be clear here. I don't shuffle away from labeling facts. The overwhelming majority of fatalities, 2018 forward, overwhelming far-right white supremacists. But what we're seeing now is an a la carte type of construction, particularly with the most fatal violence. Hate crimes are getting more violent, they're going up, they're diversifying. And we're seeing kind of everyone attack everyone sometimes. But as you can see, what happens is when you have violent political rhetoric and it's on an unbridled social media types of platforms, it goes crazy. And we're seeing this kind of exploitation both domestically and overseas. Right now, we're shooting ourselves in the foot enough, but don't kid yourself. Over 3,500 divisive Facebook ads were uncovered by Congress in the 2016 election, and a lot of it was on race and other issues. The Russians tripled their ad buys in the run-up, racially divisive ad buys in the run-up to the 2016 election. So when people say Russia doesn't fiddle, they're full of it. And not only that, the Russians are now at the point where they are, well, you know what? I'm just going to leave it there. Let me just say, international conflicts as well. We have legislation going on in states where if you're a Chinese national, you can't even buy real estate. I'm not saying that if you run a Chinese, arms company or something. I'm saying just so we're seeing this translate from the mainstream all the way into the extreme. That is all gone. So we're seeing the borders are off or the parameters are off with respect to who gets attacked. In other words, one thing I didn't show you, BLM Antifa socialists rose online. At the same time, anti-Black hate crimes hit their highest. Guess what? What do you think the worst day for hate crime was in 2019? The day impeachment was announced. So we're seeing this connection to political events. And again, hate crimes rose every election year, and those election year increases were much more than what we saw in those other years. So it's a much more freewheeling time. We're eliminationist language, stereotyping, conspiracism, anti-Semitism, and misogyny. Keep your eye on it. That's a great glue for a lot of other prejudices.
We got time for one more question.
Yes, thank you. Karen, Beck?
Hi, I'm Karen Beck, and a question I have is, we know that these haters have infiltrated our police departments, the FBI, the CIA, and what are we supposed to do about that when they're all over the place? I mean, people that are supporters of Trump, and how can we ever find our way outside of that?
Well, I don't want to answer it with respect to a particular person or candidate. We're that nonpartisan. But let me say this: a law was passed in California. Hey, if I could do a shout out to another Cal State, that's what I'm saying. Remember I said before, like it's almost embarrassing to get an award. I think Cal State San Jose should get an award. They have a human rights institute there. And they worked with us and with other folks to get something called the CLEAR Act passed with respect to extremist infiltration of law enforcement. I'm trying to work with folks federally to get that done federally. It's a big problem. The Riverside County Sheriff was a paid member of the Oath Keepers. That's the 10th largest agency in the United States, which, by the way, I think is forgivable. Right? Let's say you join something, like I used to join that record club and they kept sending records, maybe you just joined something, thought it was something and it was, but you know what? No, he gave a full-throated defense after these folks were involved in the insurrection. That's a bridge too far for me. But you know what? These are elected officials. And I think some of the things we need to do, like in Texas, where they were much more loose, they just clamped down on these constitutional sheriffs. So I think a lot of this relates to vigilance. Number one, keep your eyes open, and also, there are transparency projects that look at social media posts by public officials. A lot. It's crazy. The homophobic and Islamophobic garbage that is put up by everyone from mayors to other local public officials. It's incredible to me. And by the way, this ain't just like Arkansas. It happens here in California. And we see the secessionist movement. By the way, that secessionist movement Guess where it was headquartered? In Russia, in California. Yep, no joke. Look it up. Coordinate, don't tolerate. Make sure police departments have policies with regard to hiring and extremism. Make sure that they have policies with regard to hate crime. Here's another way you can be a pain in the neck. We have legislation in California that requires them to put up their hate crime data. Hardly anyone does. They have to put it up monthly. So go ask them.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. So we should actually go to our local police department and say, where's the hate crime data in our town?
What? But do it in a friendly way. Can you
Yeah.
like? All I ask is do it in a friendly way, because sometimes I get like chiefs go, "Who the heck did you sick on me?"
7 minutes.
And it makes it harder for me to put in a policy later. So here's what you ask them. Ask them, how many hate crimes did you have last year? How many do you have this year? What is your policy? Do you have a 2-tier method of review? Do you have a liaison officer? What do you do to make sure that, what is your social media policy with regard to officers? So, and by the way, one thing, as a former cop, never underestimate people who are overly busy. What I mean is, I spoke at Hopkins and I criticized the Baltimore police response. And a fellow in the audience was there. He said, look, we're struggling. So what I'm saying to you is, these departments can get assistance, but take a look, make sure they have a policy on hate crime, a hiring policy, a social media policy, and some kind of protocols for when a hate crime occurs. But do you understand why I love talking to groups like this? Because I could talk to 1,000 people and get a decent amount of dough, which I don't do. I mean, I talk to large groups of people, but these are the people that make the difference. And I can't be in 9 different communities. There are trans kids now that are getting beaten and bullied. Be my angels in Northern California, would you? Go to those school boards. I don't come here from on high as some celebrity. That's when you read this stuff, I go, oh my God, even my mom doesn't believe that. But it doesn't matter. Alvin Sykes, who's our first board member, passed away. He was raised by a single mom and he was abused. He had a disability. He was homeless. Yet when we went to the Attorney General Holder said, this is the fabulous Alvin Sykes. Look up his obituary. I called the Times in tears. I said, please let me pull this lever this time. We can make, he made changes that the Justice Department federally implemented after a Black musician was killed in Kansas City. I went to Kansas City on my own dime. I couldn't even get the school to reimburse. They had a cop there that was raping Black women. What I'm saying to you is, never invite anyone to speak before you. When I was in the PD, what they said to me was, you know why we love firefighters? Because their captains go into the flames too. Please stand up for the LGBTQ community. They're going through hell now. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not going through folks who are getting threatened. I know what it's like to have that happen. Allies have to stand with this community. And I apologize. I know that you all are, but you're as close as I have to angels that I'm going to get. That's why I do these smaller talks, because I'd rather talk to 25 people who are going to go out, roll up their sleeves, go to the school boards, go to human relations commissions, go to those local police departments. You're going to get things done that I just don't have the money or the resources to do. So just, it's time for me to go, I understand, but I want to let you know from the bottom of my heart what a blessing you are to this state and the work that you do. Whether you were independents, whether you call yourself things that I wouldn't agree with even, your heart is there. And that's what matters more than what political party you are in. And I want to thank you so much for letting an independent with a flu express my tremendous gratitude, because if it wasn't for some wonderful people in your party at the state and federal level, there are so many people that would go unprotected now. And while I don't wear that party label, it has been the honor of my life to work with folks like Feinstein's staff, who, God bless her, whatever you want to say. And she was a tough one to work for, from what I heard, when it came to torture or hate crime or reaching across the aisle or coming into a city that was reeling. I remember I was a child when that happened. What a wonderful legacy that she has left. Speaker Pelosi, who worked so hard to get legislation passed. Teddy Kennedy, such wonderful people. I could go on, and what I want to tell you, that I don't care how big they are. At all strata, it's that heart that looks out for others. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please, to the extent that you can, not to the extent that you can, to every extent that you can, stand with the LGBTQ community and these trans children and their families. We're having refugees coming into California now because we have Neanderthal demagogues in other states that are supposedly pro-family, that are tearing families and children apart. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing what you do, and please keep it up. That's going to keep this moving. Thank you so much for the honor of appearing before you this evening.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for your
Professor
passion.
Levin.
Thank you. You've given us inspiration and you've given us direction, and hopefully we can be your angels and work really hard.
You already are. You just know it. Bang the drum. It gets heard. Call that local newspaper once. Call them twice. Call the assembly person. Call the local people to, on whatever it is, school boards, anything, and meet with them and set up something where in your communities you meet with them regularly. That's worth more than any 2-bit egghead from Southern California could do on his own.
Yes, we're really close to our school board members. Yes, thank you.
God bless every single one of you.
Thank you very
And
much.
stand up for conservative people of goodwill if their churches get burned, or if at a Catholic church someone knocks something over, or at a Buddhist temple. The strength in what we do is that we jump over party lines, and every good Democrat that I worked with worked across the aisle on ethics, not just on politics. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Levin. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's see, where do we go? Oh, to give us an idea, that was wonderful, by the way. That was remarkable, so enlightening. So to give us an idea about hate and extremism in our own community, even in Danville and San Ramon area, I've asked 4 people to speak about our Bay Area. Each person will just have about 3 to 4 minutes to speak, and then 3 minutes for questions. Our first speaker is Teresa Drenick. Are you here, Teresa?
I am. I'm here. Yes.
Oh,
Hi.
good. Okay, great. Great. And so Teresa is from the Anti-Defamation League. She is the Deputy Regional Director for the Central Pacific region. Before that, she was a Deputy District Attorney for Alameda County for 32 years. She has a law degree from the University of California College of Law in San Francisco, formerly known as Hastings College. Thank you, Teresa, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. And that's a hard speaker to follow, but I definitely have got my ice cream and my 70s music about to queue up. So yes, you know, a lot of the statistics that were cited earlier come from ADL, and I, will share with you also that we have been tracking anti-Semitic incidents since 1979 in an annual audit, and the last 2 years have broken all records, and the year 2023 is poised to do just the same. What surprises many people when we speak is that here in our diverse and what most people think of as very liberal Bay Area, that anti-Semitic incidents are also on the rise. We see it throughout California, and we see it in all the counties throughout the Bay Area. Incidents that we reported to our office on a weekly, if not daily basis, include incidents in schools, K-12 schools and universities, in public spaces, on houses of worship, and then of course on the street. Some of the incidents rise to the level of a crime out of the penal code, as the professor was saying, and many do not. Yet the hate incidents and the anti-Semitic incidents have a really deleterious effect on the person who's targeted and on the entire community who shares, the characteristic, whether it's the Jewish community or other marginalized communities that are targets of hate and bias crimes. So we, some of, surprising when I first, Brody and I first talked about this conversation that we would have very quick, 3 minutes, but she did ask, really is it happening even here in San Ramon, in the Valley, in our local communities? And my answer to you is yes, absolutely. Just yesterday or over the weekend in Foster City, the synagogue was tagged with a swastika. In San Ramon Valley High, there are students year in, year out who are bullied for being Jewish. There have been incidents in schools of late in Marin, in Oakland, in Berkeley, where students come and there are swastikas carved in their desk. They're asked not to eat lunch at the lunch table with some of the kids, and they're told, don't come here because you're Jewish. We see the old trope of greed rearing its ugly head and actually having kids have pennies thrown at their feet in the hallway. And I know this is not in your specific area, but just this year in Hayward, so over the hill from you in San Ramon, we had a 10th grade high school teacher who, in conjunction with the assigned reading of Elie Wiesel's Night, which, as you may know, is a seminal book about the Holocaust written by a survivor, he then assigned a 40-page scree called The Hidden Tyranny, which is just about the most anti-Semitic writing that I myself have ever read, filled with every trope and lie about the Jewish people, claiming that it was because of the Jews that World War I and World War II happened, that the bombing of Pearl Harbor happened, that Jews controlled the Supreme Court and Jews have controlled world politics since the early 20s. And he assigned this, telling his students, over 100 of them, this was the truth about Jews. So we are facing a real moment of crisis right now. And what, as your speaker mentioned earlier, that the import could not be any stronger for people to stand up, call out what's happening, and let organizations know, let law enforcement know, let ADL know. We have a very easy online reporting portal that assists us in our annual audit. And the voices of love eventually can't overpower those voices of hate, but we must keep in mind that the hate speech oftentimes gives way and leads to hate crime and violence. So we are seeing that. We saw in Los Angeles last month 2 Jewish men leaving shul shot at. We had a man come into a synagogue in San Francisco earlier this year, shooting blanks at the congregants there. He was eventually arrested. But we are seeing actual, life-threatening violence taking place with targeting the Jewish community. And I know, Brody, that you really wanted me to keep this to 3 minutes. So I'll just finish up by saying that as one of your members here mentioned, that there have been incursions into multiple city council meetings, including in Sacramento, Walnut Creek, in the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors. ADL has a op-ed published in the San Francisco Chronicle today, decrying what is happening, and then also making some suggestions about how elected bodies can fight back to ensure that this hate is not normalized and does not become part of the discourse on our public square. And you're muted, Brody.
Yeah, that was great. Do we have any quick questions for Teresa? I'm having a hard, I don't have a gallery view. Let me look at the gallery view.
Yeah, you could take me off spotlight.
Yeah, no, I don't see any questions, but that was good. Thank you very much. And
The
love to-
Laura asked the resource I just mentioned. You mean that where the article is in the San Francisco Chronicle?
Yeah.
In the opinion section just today.
yes, we will have to read that. That's wonderful. I hope now we have a reference of where to go to. Thank you so much, Teresa.
All right, thank you for inviting me to be here this evening with you.
Now we're going to have Cindy Darling, who's also going to speak about anti-Semitism. Cindy?
Yeah, this is, I'm actually here tonight because Kevin Wilk, who is my fellow council member, is at another meeting, but the last couple weeks or the last couple city council meetings, we have had anonymous anti-Semitic callers calling in, targeting Kevin, targeting the overall council, and we've been struggling with what to do. And I think that's where, when Laura Halpin saw this, she sent it around to us, and so we got there. The first time they came and talked, we didn't know what we were dealing with. People complaining about skunks at the, you know, the Lindsay Wildlife Museum, and then all of a sudden we're talking to people about who believe that World War I was the subject, you know, was caused by the Jewish people. So it was a little bit jarring. The second time around, luckily, we had some people in the audience who got up and spoke after our anti-Semitic callers, and then each one of our council members spoke out and talked about, you know, the values that we as a council have, the values that we as a city have. But we're struggling with what to do with these people. Apparently, they seem to want to keep coming back. And we're trying to find a way to focus more on the light and less on the dark and hold our community together. It is kind of shocking. Sometimes I think of Walnut Creek as this little happy bubble. And I think it's with Zoom, they can sneak into your bubble. So that's what's going on in Walnut Creek. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know Kevin has already talked to the Anti-Defamation League about it, and trying to figure out who the individuals are. I know our police chief, because some of the signs that have been on the El Cortola overpass over Highway 24 have called Kevin out by name. That the law enforcement is looking at it, making sure that we are doing what we need to do to keep our council safe.
Thank you, Cindy. And yes, we are in good touch also with your police chief from ADL.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to ask you, what is your lawyers or attorneys of Walnut Creek tell you to do, and how is this going to be handled in the future when they?
It's interesting. It's you know, we have had, this is not the first time we struggled with the balance between First Amendment and other interests. When we did our Planned Parenthood buffer zone ordinance, we had to listen to a lot of anti-abortion protesters come in and accuse Planned Parenthood of murder because they have a First Amendment right to do that. When the first set of calls came in, the first caller began to cross a line over into defaming Kevin, and that's when the attorney allowed us to cut it off. But the attorney has asked the mayor to work closely with him to lay out the rules ahead of time, you know, no profanity, no personal attacks. And then the mayor can give somebody a warning. If they're persistent in a personal attack, we can cut them off. But the attorneys are telling us, you have to allow people their First Amendment rights, even if you hate what they're saying.
That's good, because they had said really nasty things to Kevin Wilk, and so that makes sense that you give them a warning. And yes, okay.
Yeah,
great.
It's not fun, I tell you. I watch my video, I don't realize how much I play with a pen when this is going on.
And I should have mentioned beforehand that you were on the Walnut Creek Planning Commission for 10 years, and you've been a council member on the Walnut Creek City Council for about 2 or 3 years. So
Yep.
Thank you for your dedication to that.
Thank you.
Are there any
Thanks
other
for-
questions real quick? No? Okay. Let's see, who do we have now? Our next speaker is Sameena Usman. Sameena, are you available? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, Laura Halpern, did you have a quick question?
I did. I mean, I was at the meeting with Cindy, and I'm just wondering about what the city attorney had to say in response to the man who was speaking on behalf of White Lives Matter. And, you know, where does that just fall under the umbrella of free speech? I mean, it's highly threatening.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
Wondering
interesting.
what came up.
I've been getting schooled on the boundary between hateful speech and hate speech, and where the First Amendment comes in. You know, if somebody comes in and says, we need to kill all the Jews, you can cut them down, you can shut them off. If people come in and say, Kevin Wilk is a blah, blah, you know, and say something that's not true about Kevin, we can cut him off. But they also, the attorneys have been advising us, the First Amendment right. They have a right to have whatever hateful, they have. And then we've all been encouraging ourselves and others in the community to speak out and say, these are not values that we support. And but one of the things we're looking at is with Zoom, it gives them a certain degree of anonymity, and whether or not we keep going with that.
Or you could require them to put their last name in.
You can't require that, apparently.
Oh, and their email?
Ask,
Don't you have their
can-
email when they join?
Nope, you can ask, but you can't require them to turn on their camera or give them their last name.
Okay. But they have to put their email in to join?
No,
Okay. Oh, that's right. They're on a city council meeting. That's right.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Cindy, for coming and sharing with us what's
Well,
happening.
thank you.
Now we have Sameena Usman, who is an advocacy consultant for both Support Life Foundation and Secure Justice. And I will let her tell you about these organizations. In the past, she's also served as the government relations coordinator in the San Francisco office for the Council on American Islamic Relations, known as CAIR, C-A-I-R. And CAIR is the California's largest Muslim civil liberties and advocacy organization. So thank you, Sameena.
No, thank you so much for having me. And actually, this is a very interesting discussion. I mean, I wish we didn't have to be discussing this issue. I wish that everybody can just have a kumbaya moment and we can all just live in peace and harmony together. But unfortunately, we have these elements and these issues within our community, and oftentimes we feel like, okay, this is the Bay Area. We feel like it's a safe space, but unfortunately, these things happen over here as well. So in my work with CAIR, we came across so many of these issues and so many of these incidents. But what's interesting, when I was listening to Dr. Levin's speech, and when you look at the FBI reports, you don't really see too many reports from the Muslim community of hate incidents. And I think that the reason why that happens is because oftentimes people from the Muslim community haven't been very comfortable coming forth and reporting these type of incidents because of how the FBI has used interactions with the Muslim community in order to spy and surveil and try to recruit to become to become a co-conspirator. No, I'm sorry, what's the term? To become a agent provocateur, that's the term. And so that's why oftentimes these things aren't reported. The community feels more comfortable reporting these incidents to CAIR, and we see that there's far more than what's reported in some of these databases. There was a survey that was released in 2021 that was conducted by the UC Berkeley's Othering and Belonging Institute, and they found that Muslim Americans experience Islamophobia and they've experienced it 67.5% of the participants said that they experienced Islamophobia in their lifetimes, and that they've been impacted by this. 93% said that their emotional well-being has been impacted by Islamophobia. And we found that also 76.7% of women are likely to experience it, compared to 58% of men who are victims of Islamophobia. And so this is definitely something that is prevalent in the community. I know I've experienced a lot of Islamophobia. I spoke at a town hall that was run by Assemblymember Lowe and was yelled at throughout the whole time, saying that I'm a terrorist, I'm a this, I'm a that. It was really horrific, and I was afraid to walk to the car without being escorted by the police. I have been yelled at in the shopping center. I've been I've been mooned. That wasn't very fun. I've been told where, go back to where you came from. I'm like, San Diego. But anyway, so I was asked to report on things that have happened in Contra Costa County. And so, there have been a number of incidents that I've been able to find, but you've had break-ins to the Islamic Center of East Bay, which is in Antioch, where books were set up in flames, chairs were burnt. And so there was a lot of destruction that happened over there. You have in Berkeley, a lot of incidents that happen on the school campus, both for students and also for professors. You have in Concord, there was spray painting, anti-Muslim graffiti of no Muslims on the walls of Muslim-owned businesses in Concord. In Richmond, you there were threats that were made to the Islamic Center of West Contra Costa County. And this person also, when police went to his home, they found a pipe bomb inside of his home. And I believe the intention was supposed to be to attack a mosque. You have in San Ramon, you had a San Ramon mayoral candidate who refused to take part in a Muslim candidate forum that was run by yours truly. You have and this is in conjunction with MCA and also the San Ramon Valley Islamic Center. You have in Walnut Creek, you have they had 4 break-ins in less than 6 months at the Walnut Creek Islamic Center. And somebody had mentioned earlier, I believe it was Karen, in regards to how police, the concerns of racism within the police ranks. And so we've had in Antioch most recently, you had police that were found to have made both racist and Islamophobic slurs in relation to residents in the area. And this is not just an isolated incident. This is in a number of other jurisdictions as well. It's just you don't really hear about it because there's the wall of silence. And so that's why it is important to make sure that these type of hate groups are not infiltrating the police ranks. And it's important to be vigilant about that. But yeah, these are prevalent issues that are impacting the Muslim community. We don't hear as much about it. Oh, another thing is that about school bullying. We do a survey of Muslim students and found that about 47% of Muslim students said that they have been bullied. 55% said that they've felt unsafe, unwelcome, or uncomfortable at school because of their Muslim identity. And you have, what's extra concerning to me is that nearly 1 in 4 respondents reported that a teacher, administrative, or other adult at their school made offensive comments about Islam or Muslims. Now that's especially problematic because you look to a teacher for guidance, for security, for acceptance, but if your teacher is setting that type of tone in the classroom, what do you expect what's going to be happening outside the classroom? So, these are issues that we need to work on. We need to, join together and support other communities that are facing these type of incidences, especially, with the attacks on like the API communities. And so, and all of these incidences are on the rise. And so we need to support our brothers and sisters of all faiths and all backgrounds as well. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I can't hear you, you're muted.
I'm muted. Thank you so much. That was very thorough. And we have a question from Cindy Darling.
Yes, Sameena mentioned the incident that happened at the Walnut Creek Islamic Center, and I know that the gentleman who ran the center came to talk to us about that, and we're feeling underwhelmed by the response they got. Do you know if they are feeling better these days about the support they've gotten, or
Good
we could talk
question.
offline?
I actually left CARE back in January, so I'm not privy to all the the cases, and so I've been working for I've been working with Secure Justice on a lot of related efforts that I've been doing, like that I was working on with CARE, which involves privacy related, prison reform, police reform, that type of stuff. But yeah, no, I don't.
Okay.
I'm not privy to that.
I have to actually like ask them then, in other words.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Would you be willing to tell us which ceremony candidates wouldn't come to your session?
His name is I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's Sanat Sethi. Yeah, it was really problematic.
Was he
I mean-
East Indian?
I'm sorry?
Was he East Indian?
I believe so, yeah.
I think that was a few years ago.
Oh,
Yeah, that was in the 2016 election, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, 2018. I think it was 2018.
Yeah.
I've run a number of candidate forums, and so it's been a it's been a while.
Yes. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming and speaking to us tonight.
Thank you.
Let's see. Now we representing the LGBT community is Jeff Koertzen. Jeff is the former Contra Costa County Democratic Party Central Committee Chair. He's also served at the Central Committee as past chair, treasurer, bylaws, rules chair, and parliamentarian. He served as a delegate to the California Democratic Party Convention since 2011 and has served as an e-board rep for the CDP for 4 years, representing his assembly district. In May of this year, Jeff was elected regional director for Region 3 of the California Democratic Party at the convention in Los Angeles. Region 3 covers assembly districts 4, 11, 14, 15, and includes portions or all of the following counties: Alameda, Colusa, Contra Costa, Lake, Napa, Solano, Sonoma, and Yolo. Wow, that's large coverage. Thank you, Jeff, for being here.
Thank you, Brody. I really am glad to be here, and having gone through all the speakers before me, and I love CARE. They're a great organization. If you haven't heard of them, please check them out. It really is an amazing organization. So I'm here to talk about the LGBTQ community, and the one thing about LGBTQ that a lot of people don't realize is that for all other hate, for the most part, it's outside of the family unit. Within the LGBTQ community, you have occasionally, or more often, hate inside the family unit as well. So once they come out as LGBT, some people are kicked out of their homes. If they are transgender, they find difficulty not only finding housing, they have trouble finding work. It just becomes a never-ending problem. And it's been a lot easier for transgender people to find work within the last couple of decades. But early on, it was much more problematic, and you'll hear a lot of transgender people would work the streets. And you'll also find that actually with young people working the streets, because it's the only way they can survive. After they've been kicked out of their homes, they don't find a place to go, people to accept them. So it really has been a problem. But I'm gonna, within the area specifically, I'm going to start with a story of a young man named Bobby Griffith. Bobby Griffith lived in Walnut Creek with his family. His mother, Mary Griffith, after he came out as gay, told him that she would never have a gay son. And the rest of his family started to accept him, but her pastor at her church had convinced her that homosexuality is a sin and gays are doomed to spend eternity in hell. She called her son sick, perverted, and a danger to children based on the information she was receiving from her church. Her son moved to Portland, Oregon in 1983. And he was living there where he was able to actually come out and live within the lifestyle. But then as a gay man, he went to gay clubs, he was meeting other gay people, but his family relationship really weighed on him, and he jumped off a bridge into the path of an oncoming truck. That has been made into a movie starring Sigourney Weaver. It's called Prayers for Bobby. I met Mary Griffith at a PFLAG meeting, and she realized after her son died that was her son, and she started questioning her faith, or at least the teaching that she had been receiving at her church. And realizing that her son was more important to her than her belief in what her pastor had been telling her. Next on my timeline is 1985. A young man by the name of Timothy Charles Lee was found hanging from a tree in Concord. He's a 23-year-old Black gay man, and the police called it a suicide. Everyone around him was convinced that it was not a suicide. Two members of the KKK were actually arrested for attacking two other Black men in Concord the same night. But yet this was considered a suicide and the case was closed. 1994, also in Concord, a woman by the name of a transgender woman. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the woman's name here. It's important to say their names. I'm sorry. Terry Ladwig, 28 years old, was murdered on December 2nd, 1994. The murderer was actually arrested in January of this year. 28 years later, he was out for 28 years. They finally found him while testing DNA and running DNA analysis, and finally found that murderer. 2002, in Newark, Gwen Arroyo. Now, this is not all Contra Costa. I'm trying to get the area here. But a young woman by the name of Gwen Arroyo, she was 20 years old, I believe 19. She was murdered by three friends who had been sexually involved with her when they found out that she was born male. And she'd not gone through transition, but she presented as female, and they thought she was female. And so when they found out, they were angry and murdered her. At their trial, they actually presented a defense called the gay panic defense, that when a person, a reasonable person, when they are confronted with a transgender person, finding out that that person's transgender, that they, especially in a sexual situation, that it's okay for them to supposedly self-defend by murdering someone. They were sentenced to prison, and one of them was just released this year. But Gwen is also the reason that the Susan Bonilla, who is the former assemblywoman from Concord, she wrote the nation's first anti-gay panic defense law. So she passed in the state legislature a law saying that you cannot claim gay panic or trans panic as a defense in a murder trial or in beating or anything else. You just can't claim that, oh my God, I found out that they were gay, or I found out that they were transgender and I had to kill them. So seems logical to me that you can't do that. But next on my list is a young woman by the name of Jules Gutierrez in 2013. She was bullied by her, I don't know if you remember, it's 2013, there was a video of her in Hercules. Kids at the school were bullying her, and she struck back at one of them. So the police arrested her for attacking her bullies. Charges were eventually dropped, but the police, the other kids were sent home on suspension, but she was arrested because this transgender young woman was actually fought back. And so she was arrested. Speaking of police, a California highway patrolman from Vallejo, gay man, ended up having to sue the CHP because he was continually harassed on the job as a gay man. He first sued them in 2018, and they finally settled in 2022. And this is what's going on in the police departments. Not too long ago, a man from Pleasanton had actually phoned in death threats to Senator Scott Wiener. And they found the man, they arrested him, he was convicted. They found weapons, ghost weapons, an AR-15 on his at home, and none of them were registered. But you know, this Scott is also Jewish, so this was an anti-gay, anti-Semitic approach. So those are some of them. Now, I also want to touch on the transgender, and I really want to because just like Dr. Levin had said, transgender are getting the brunt of the attacks right now. It's really important to understand that a person who is transgender does not choose their gender. They're just acknowledging the gender that they feel, that they identify as, that the body just doesn't express. Their body currently does not express that. So they choose to just express themselves as the gender that they recognize. So one of the things that I want to start with in this area is that a lot of us that know about the LGBTQ community, and Brody even mentioned this earlier, that in 1969, the Stonewall riots in New York, a lot of people don't realize that in 1966, there were what were called the Compton riots in San Francisco. Also started by transgender people who got tired of getting picked on by the police, and they refused to move from this Compton cafeteria, and police came in, arrested them, but there was a riot throughout the night, and that actually started the transgender movement, activism in San Francisco, was the 1966 Compton cafeteria riots. But there is something within the transgender community. In December, they have the Day of Remembrance. And there is a website, it's TDOR, which is Transgender Day of Remembrance, tdor.translivesmatter.info. And they actually track murders of transgender people. It goes back to the 1980s, but it is, when I was going through the records, the number of transgender people that are being murdered jumps exactly what Dr. Levin was talking about. 2015, 2016, it goes from 30 a year up to 70 or 80. And you start seeing more and more of these attacks and these murders. I'm just going to name some real quick. Joanna Langer, January 2nd, 1944, from Concord, was stabbed to death. I mentioned Terry Ladwig. She was strangled December 2nd, 1994 in Concord. James Percy Rivers, age 23, December 30th, 1995, was beaten and stabbed in Oakland. Emin Bodfish, age 56, on June 24th, 1999, was beaten to death in Orinda. Stanley Van Dyke Traylor, November 6, 2003, was shot to death in Oakland. Cindy Quarta, age 24, was shot to death on October 1st, 2003 in San Pablo. Tony Delicious Green was beaten to death on August 13th, 2004 in San Francisco. Thalia Sandoval, age 27, was stabbed to death in Antioch on November 19th, 2006. Caprice Curry, age 31, stabbed to death in San Francisco on January 17th, 2009. Maria Molina Qualls was beaten to death in San Francisco at the age of 23 on December 9th, 2009. Brandy Martell, age 37, was shot to death in Oakland on April 29th, 2012. Kayla Moore, age 41, died in custody of the police in Berkeley on February 12th, 2013. Taha Gabriel de Jesus, age 36, was stabbed to death in San Francisco, February 1st, 2015. Now I'm going to mention one that is out of the area for a very specific reason. I found this on the site of NCLR, which NCLR stands for the National Center for Lesbian Rights. It is a local organization that fights for LGBTQ equality. It's a legal organization. Their head of the legal department is a transgender man by the name of Shannon Minter, who is amazing. Shannon actually wrote part of the decision, or wrote part of the friend of the court for the Prop 8 to try and get it dismissed. But on this site there, NCLR, I found a story about a woman who was concerned about a transgender son, 14 years old, took her son to the hospital, concerned that he was going to try to kill himself. That hospital refused to acknowledge that he was male. They kept misgendering him. They would refuse to call him by the name that he had preferred. They kept what's known as the dead name. The dead name is the prior name before somebody announces that they're transgender. They kept using the dead name. So they refused to keep him in the hospital, saying that this isn't a mental health issue. This is just stupidity or whatever. And then he went home and killed himself. So she obviously sued the hospital. Now this one is extremely painful. Dane Gray July 2nd, 2018, at the age of 22, died by suicide in San Francisco. And I want to read to you something here. Dane passed away on July 2nd. Dane's parents are refusing to claim his body because he is trans. His parents disowned him, according to the coroner, and the coroner still hasn't responded to the calls to come and pick up the body. This is hate within a family, and how anybody can do that to their child. I don't understand it. Daphne Dorman, age 44, died by suicide in San Francisco, October 11th, 2019. And I'm keeping suicide in here as part of the hate because this is something that happens in the LGBTQ community when somebody can't deal with that hate anymore. They feel the only way out is escaping by suicide. Nakai David, age 33, December 3rd, 2021, Oakland, shot to death. In 2022, a woman from Antioch was arrested for attempted murder of a homeless woman in Berkeley. She beat her savagely with a shovel that was covered in blood when they picked her up. Irene Nicole Smith, this year, January 24th, died in San Francisco. They're trying to suggest it was a suicide. Again, friends don't think that it was. And then Banco Pazzo, also known as Banco Brown, a young Black trans man, age 24, was shot to death at a Walgreens in San Francisco on April 27, 2023. Originally, the police had arrested the security guard who shot Banco. And then they were like, oh, well, clearly this person, deserved it. And they let him go. And nothing has happened as a result. So these are things that are happening, and yet these people are losing their lives. We've got people that are being attacked and killed, and those are just the deaths. I haven't even talked about the hate, the graffiti, the speech online, all of the other types of attacks that happen within the LGBTQ community. Because like Dr. Levin and the ADL said, those aren't reported. People don't report those because they're afraid. They also think that, well, what am I going to do? And then they see things like people standing up for hate at school boards and saying that kids are being groomed to be gay. No child is groomed to be gay. Like Harvey Milk said during the 1980s, during the whole thing with, I'm sorry, I don't remember the bill, but where they were trying to prevent teachers from being gay. He said, I grew up in a straight household. My parents are straight, my brother is straight, my sister is straight. And if you think that kids become gay because of their role models, then I should be straight. He also said, which doesn't apply in my case, that people who, if you became your role models, there'd be a lot more nuns running around. But anyway, that kind of brings it to a close here for me. But the whole thing about in Contra Costa, we've got a school board member who is trying to remove books and trying to tell kids that you can't be gay. You can't say the word gay because supposedly they're straight, and they're going back to what happened with Bobby Griffith back in 1983 when he killed himself. This is what the parents want, I guess. We're returning back 40, 50 years ago to a time that I thought we'd moved beyond. So that's it for me.
Wow, thank you, Jeff. That was really somber.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Wow, I have to digest all that. Thank you. And it really made sense to go through all the suicides and beatings because, it really hit home. So thank you so much for
You need to
doing.
hear it. You need to know what's going on.
Yeah. I'm going to turn the meeting over now to Rick Adler.
All right. Again, thanks, Jeff, and all the other prior speakers. This portion deals with the public bank, which has been in the news more frequently lately. But we have the privilege of having two people involved in the public bank, Margie Lewis and George Quaye, and they are organizing a public bank in Alameda County. In Contra Costa County, city of Richmond, they've also expressed interest in having a public bank. So this is something you're going to be hearing more about. It's nice that we can hear about it now. Margie Lewis is a founding member of the California Banking Alliance, and she's a board member of the Friends of the Public Bank East Bay. She is an Oakland resident, a community activist, and if that's not enough, she's also trained as a psychiatric social worker. So she's got her mind in a lot of different places that are very useful. George Quaye is a board member of the Friends of the Public Bank East Bay. He is the owner of Shoutbomb LLC, a software company providing communication services for public libraries. He's also a resident of San Leandro. He's a graduate of Arizona State University with majors in both math and chemistry. And I believe Marjorie is going to kind of introduce the subject, and she's also going to bring in George after that. So it's a pleasure and privilege to introduce Margie Lewis.
Good evening, and I want to thank you all for having us. And I want to say that along the very political themes this evening that have been explored, we also say that this is an aspect of change that's coming, and it's fundamental change in a really good way. So it's positive news. And with that, I'm going to introduce George to do a presentation explaining what a public bank is. Okay, George, take it away.
Okay, just give me a second and let me share my screen.
And as George is doing that, we'll have time for questions after.
Oh, Brody, would you allow me to share my screen?
Brody, you're muted.
I think Cecilia's working on it for you.
Okay, okay.
Yes, there, yeah, you're the co-host now.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I appreciate the time to talk about this topic. That's been near and dear to me for at least for the last 3 years. But the organization, the Friends of the Public Bank, have been at this since basically 2017. We're here to talk about a public bank, and we want to try and lay out the basics. First, the public bank, as the name says, is a financial institution, a bank, that is owned by a city, county, or region instead of private shareholders. So I want to pause there to make that clear that this institution is in no uncertain terms capitalized and run as a bank with the support of the city, county, and region. So it takes its priorities from the people it serves, the communities in which the monies to capitalize the bank came from, and it leverages that equity in support of loans, credit, liquidity, financial services to local financial institutions through which these assets are distributed or provided to the local community. It will be responsible for distributing federal funds. So I'll discuss Bank of North Dakota's preeminence in distributing PPP loans during the pandemic. It reinvests the profits back into the community, creating essentially a circular economy for the profits of the bank. And it supports building wealth locally, supporting small marginalized businesses. So again, the public bank is not a retail bank. It doesn't provide accounts for individuals or small businesses. It will not be in competition with local financial institutions because the California Banking Act, which was passed in 2019, that kind of lays the groundwork for the public bank, said that the institution must work in partnership with community banks, credit unions, CDFIs in order to make this work. And it's not extractive, it's not a drain of the community, because the monies that are capitalizing the bank are from the community. The proceeds are then invested back in the community. So again, public banks ensure our dollars are working for public good by allowing governmental institutions, agencies to divest public money from projects they don't align with or priorities that the community values, or don't value. It's investment in a circular local economy, and it increases public revenue in some aspects in two ways. One, by reducing the costs for managing public assets, and as well the revenue side. So current system as it stands is the private banking system and the public banking system. And to be clear, the notion of the public bank, at least here in the United States, isn't something that's known. But outside of the United States, public banks account for probably a third of institutions that provide services to local communities. So again, private banks, they essentially take the citizens' money, in the form of the budgets of the cities and county, and they manage it, but nonetheless those monies are invested as the private bank would like to be invested. And we're looking at providing a different view, in this case a public bank where the taxes are going into the bank and essentially circulating within the local economy. So again, public banks provides an alternative to Wall Street banks. So there's only one public bank in the United States right now, and it's a Bank of North Dakota. It's been around since 1919, so more than 100 years. And it continues to be a strong force within the state of North Dakota, providing a very, very robust support for their local community banks and credit unions. Per capita, North Dakota has more local financial institutions than anywhere in the United States. Supporting North Dakota in recovering from financial losses. As a matter of fact, in 2008 recession, their rebound was pretty spectacular. Also, as I mentioned, during the pandemic, they distributed more PPP loans per worker than anywhere else in the country. They have considered the load that their citizens and their children going to college, and they've looked at refinancing student loans at a very, very low rate. And with all that investment and distribution of assets, they've made a very tidy profit. And I think fiscal year 2022-23 is 18% return on capital. So, so where are we? We're looking at this as Margie had mentioned, this is a change agent. This is something, a new institution that, that we're trying to bring to life that will, change the landscape and provide any number of additional supports for cities and the county at this juncture and going forward. So our model for the Public Bank East Bay is going to be capitalized by local cities and Alameda County. In this case, it's the cities of Richmond, Oakland, and Berkeley. It'll be governed by a 15-member board. A majority of those community members, but also in that mix are bankers and those who understand finance. They're partners with local financial institutions, as the public bank needs to be. They are a regulated institution, DFPI from the state and FDIC at the federal level. And the institution will grow as cities and counties, cities within the Alameda County, and even outside the county, decide to deposit their funds within the bank. So the bank itself is looking at 4 things as its mandate, and this is essentially the framework that we've modeled in terms of our presentation, our business plan to the FPI and FDIC is support for affordable housing development, residential electrification, small business lending, and municipal finance. This is a community-driven set of priorities. Engaged in this process as part of our work is that this will support racial equity, community wealth building, environmental sustainability, and other local priorities. This is just the beginning. This is how we are going to, or how we envision the first 3 years of the bank's operations in these 4 areas. Our progress so far, AB 857, California Banking Act, was passed in 2019, and it provided the framework and the pathway for the public banks. We have, over the years, passed resolutions from Richmond, Berkeley, and Oakland, and Hayward even, in support of the public bank. Received commitments from Richmond, Oakland to participate in the agency working group, which is essentially the table at which the cities would get to kind of hash out the incorporation and the workings of the bank. We're finalizing a slate of board candidates for the agency to review. And we've raised, actually right now, it's $750,000 in support for foundations and the county, with a projected raising $2.4 million to, basically kickstart the running of the bank. The next steps is a future resolution affirming the county's involvement in the public bank creation and its participation in the working group. Hank Levy actually is a strong proponent of public bank and is spearheading this particular step. Working with the staff from Oakland, Berkeley, and Richmond to design the corporate structure, as I'd mentioned, and work with the county treasurer to identify the actual sources of funding to capitalize the bank. Just to recap, the Public Bank East Bay is a work in progress, planning for 2025 opening. The Public Bank is a wholesale bank, not retail. as the name entails, it's a public, not private, and we're beholden to the residents of the cities and the county, not private investors. And the bank's charter, and it's embedded in its charter, is a focus on traditionally underserved communities and providing access to capital to the cities and the county. These are some of the local communities, organizations that have provided their backing and support, and we're going to be leaning on them in the next period to kind of make sure the project, as it were, keeps rolling along. But at this point, if you have any questions, please feel free.
I would like to interject that in one of the last slides, it said that Berkeley would be voting next week. They have already voted. So all of the cities have resolutions supporting the bank. And also for you to know that at this point, but we'll see, California is leading the nation in starting public banks. It is a nationwide movement. And AB 857, the law that we got passed in 2019, is the first law in the country that provides a pathway. Right now, I know Massachusetts is working on it, New York is working on it, and there's several movements throughout California, LA, San Francisco, I know Sacramento. So there's a little friendly rivalry, but we all support each other, and whoever sort of goes first will provide a template. And so we wanted to, as I said, answer any questions that you may have. And if you think of them later on and want to give them to Brody and she can contact us, we'd be happy to answer it. If you saw all those logos, if your group wanted to think about, you support us too, we'd be very happy to have your logo up there as well. And in the future too, if you think this was something you'd like Contra Costa to be involved in, I mean, anything, we would love any help that we can get in terms of a little political muscle with our county. And so if they knew Contra Costa thought that this was a good idea, if they would even do a resolution, or if any of you know people who would be interested in helping that way to push on Alameda County, we would appreciate that.
So, Richard, I guess your hand went up.
Yeah, I just have a question. Obviously, you are doing this because there's a real need in the community for a public bank that will do things that aren't being done now. And I'm assuming this should hopefully make the community stronger, because these organizations will have capital and they can invest in good causes, and this is the engine that gets the whole thing started. Is that your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, this began in some ways, global picture, the divestment movement, in terms of, get your money out of Wall Street banks, but the truth of the matter was that, there actually, it was easy enough to say, I'm going to move my account. But when you're talking about Alameda County or the city of Oakland or Berkeley moving hundreds of millions of dollars, even a portion of their money at rest, because it's not just their normal year-to-year funds. There are hundreds of millions of dollars in their basically their savings account. There was nowhere to kind of move that to, because no one was, big enough to manage that. And not to say that, coming off the, moving, into 2025, that the bank is going to be able to provide those kinds of services. But the idea that there's an institution that can grow to start taking control of some of those services. And so you could imagine, I think the number previous slides were like, the city of Oakland paid $63 million in, for banking services. So you could imagine just, if we take away 10 to 20% of that, would Oakland be, money poor right now in terms of their budget outlook? Because $63 million just, went out the door just to hold their money, just to manage their money. So this was in part and parcel, as you say, a way to, provide resources, keep the resources from being drained, and then allocating those resources into the community.
But you still have to use I guess, the general principles of good banking, right? And you don't what Silicon Valley Bank did.
Well, I mean, to be absolutely clear, again, this is a bank just like any other bank, FDIC insured, DFPI. But then again, Silicon Valley Bank was also FDIC insured. Well, more than FDIC insured. So we try and make the case that of course, no one knows the future, but you could say that in light of what happened at Silicon Valley Bank, or at least what we understand to have happened, the public bank would not have that particular weakness, because you could imagine, what I understood about part of the, the run, as it were, was literally an email thread of very wealthy individuals who just said, I'm getting my money out. And that, there's no bank in the world, when people get scared, they'll ever have enough money to cover. And that was quite clear. The public bank would be capitalized by Alameda County, Oakland, Richmond, and Berkeley. And so the notion that those four cities would then say, we're going to just implode this institution, because, and you can try and imagine something. Of course, you could say that Oakland could go bankrupt, but I mean, I guess, we could be hit by a meteorite as well. There's lots of things you could say about that, but what happened to Silicon Valley Bank is not a weakness of the public bank, and it's going to be run by bankers. The CEO, C-suite are going to be bankers. They have to be, because they need to pass muster. We still need to make money. So all those things you can think of a bank, but in this context, it's your bank.
Right.
And the other thing I wanted to say is that the basis for the Wall Street, and not every private bank, but many private banks, is pure profit motive and beholden to the shareholders. And that is not our fundamental basis. Yes, we have to make money, some money. We don't need to make the gazillion dollars that the Wall Street banks want to make, nor do we need to, because our money is going to be recycled within the community. And what happened with the Silicon Valley and the other banks, they were investing in all this risky stuff, derivatives, whatnot, because of the profit motive. We're not operating, it's apples and oranges. We're not operating in the same way. And we will have so much oversight because we are new and because we are public. We really, we'll be under the microscope, and that's okay.
Stephanie?
Very good, thanks.
Yes, I just had a question, because when I was looking at the slide about the private bank versus the public. So would it be available to private individuals to be a depositor and to put your money? No, so who's your main customer? Nonprofits or cities or?
Well,
The cities and the county. We want tax money. We want BART money.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? We want AC Transit money.
East Bay Mud, for instance.
Okay, so your customer base then are either are municipal institutions.
Essentially, yeah, because
Okay.
Funny as it sounds, that's where the money is.
Okay.
And and it's a large enough base and a broad enough constituency in terms of those types of public entities. And again, we're not asking them to, shift their entire portfolio to this bank. At least for now, the capitalization that we're asking for the Public Bank East Bay is $40 million across the county, Oakland, Berkeley, and Richmond, and that's around like 1% of their funds available. So you could imagine 1% from East Bay Mud, 1% from BART, 1% from so any number of those institutions would capitalize the bank to a large extent, and then that's not even including all the other cities in the county that have yet to invest.
And so the gains, yeah, and I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify,
of
George.
course.
And so the gains then are not like profits that would go to individuals. The gains are to the whole community. The gains are we're building low income housing. We're building moderate income housing.
Yes.
Okay.
So you could imagine, for instance, the notion of supporting low income housing development.
Right.
The notion that we found out that there's money available, but what the developers have been telling us is that we find a piece of property, and then it's a negotiating process of how much is it going to cost, and then we really don't get bridge funding enough to manage the actual planning and building process. So we would come in, as the Public Bank for the East Bay, would have the essentially the building departments, involved in this process, and we would provide the bridge funds from beginning land acquisition to the shovels in the ground and the building goes up. And surety across the board. Of course, it still has to be a viable plan, because we're providing the funds, and our partners, the local financial institutions, are also going to be sitting at the table. So you could imagine that not a lot of eyes on the project to make sure that it's a valuable project. But that's an example. So and another thing is refinancing just even a portion of local debt. So bond measures. The bank would be able to provide, an opportunity to refinance those bonds as well. Lower interest rate. And guess what? Who are you paying that interest to once we refinance? It's back to yourself. And so these are some of the, at least on paper, our business plan is, purporting to do.
And I'm sorry, I would imagine you're still trying to reach out to other cities in the East Bay, maybe the county of Contra Costa and other counties?
Well, right now we are moving forward with those three cities, Berkeley, Oakland, and Richmond, and Alameda County. What I was saying is, if any of you have political muscle, whatever, it would be wonderful to get a resolution passed by one of your cities or your county, and then that would help us a lot with Alameda County. Say, well, look, Contra Costa County thinks it's a great idea as well. And there are a lot of other areas like Humboldt County and Santa Rosa who are dying to deposit with us. But I wanted to go back to your question when you said, well, what about individuals? The law is such that we are not allowed to, hold private and individual investments where means exists for that to happen. And they do with community banks and CDFIs and credit unions. So the law says that we must partner with them, not compete with them, partner with them. So we can help them. They are going to be the funnel. So if you want a mortgage, you want a small business loan, you want a development loan, you do it through those banks, and we partner with them. We have programs, we help them. We can buy down interest. You know, we can speed up the process for things. And because of who we are and innovative, things like land trusts, we are totally worker co-ops, things like that. We are happy to help provide financial support to institutions that they would go to for loans, because we're not afraid of land trusts or worker co-ops, where traditional Wall Street banks can't understand like more than one or two people being a depositor, you know, a whole worker co-op or a land. It's very hard for them to accept that concept.
Thank you. Thank you for answering those questions. This is very interesting.
It's fundamental change.
Absolutely, and it's needed. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions, please? Oh, you're on mute.
And try to be polite. So what's the next step? And you said you're not looking for other cities in Contra Costa County to be a part of this. What is your next step in order to be successful in 2025?
Well, as we're planning right now, the major founding organizations, as we mentioned, are the 3 cities in the county. So we've begun the process of, actually we're in the middle of the process of doing the business plan, and sitting down with these organizations to work through the incorporation documents. So in some ways, as a nonprofit, community organization, essentially we've got our arms around enough of the community to get this bank up and running. But we still need, going forward, support, and learning about the public bank itself, because it would behoove the cities, to look at this, consider it long term, be involved or interested in the progress of the bank, and be ready, passing resolutions to say, if the bank opens, that we would be willing to deposit X funds in this institution. Of course, the question about how those funds are utilized, where it needs to go, that would be the purview of the cities and counties that actually deposit money in there. And of course, that is what we're looking for right now, is to spread the word, get people ready to put money in this institution, and essentially get ready to start flexing your muscles and saying, hey, this is where we want the money spent in our community. These are our priorities, and put that on the table. And this is what the institution's for. So that's what we're looking for right now.
And also, if, as I said, your Democratic club supported this, we would be happy to put your logo up and count you as a supporting organization. And just so you know, the city of Pinole has asked us to do a presentation to them, which we are going to do. And you heard that the city of Hayward is passing a resolution in support. So as I said, if you felt like any of you had the time and the inclination to want to work on your county to pass a supporting resolution, that would be great, because it all would help this to start moving. We have questions from Jeffrey and Jeff. I don't know who is first.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm actually part of the coordinating committee for the San Francisco Bay Area working group of Third Act. And I put a thing, I sent a message to George in the chat, direct message, with my email address. But I'd love to talk with you, because we have a campaign. We had I think you may have referred to this earlier, we had a Move Your Money campaign for individuals, but we are now actually trying to address municipalities, universities, corporations. larger groups to get them to move their financial relationships from the banks that are, causing climate chaos. And as I'm sure very well aware, that's very complex. But I'd love to talk with you some about that. And we're also part of a coalition with a large number of other groups that are at this point specifically focusing on how to get municipalities to move their underwriting of municipal bonds. And I heard, you mentioned that in passing. So is that something that, could you contact me via email and we could perhaps set up a time to talk about that?
Of course, of course, of course.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you.
And if I may ask, would you also do us a kindness? Public Bank East Bay is our website. Just go in and add yourself to our email list as well, and you'll be informed on our, we're providing updates to you as well, but I'll reach out directly.
Great. Okay, thank you.
So Jeff?
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually the first time that I heard about the public bank was in a conversation with one of the Contra Costa supervisors. I'm pretty sure that we could get, I know 2 that we can get right away. I'm pretty sure that we can swing a 3rd one pretty easily. So I think that's something that we could possibly work on as well.
Yeah, we'd be happy to provide presentations, and if need be, I mean, we could even bring the big gun Hank to come and answer some of their. Of course, they all everyone has questions and concerns and so on, because this is new. But we'd be happy to do presentations and provide feedback.
Yeah, there's always questions about making sure that the money is safe, and
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, compared to what? Look at
right.
all the-
What are you investing in right now, right? So
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
So I put the link to the our website, so you can all feel free to check us out. So again, Brody, if people have questions that they think of later, feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you.
was quite interesting.
Mm.
Such a new idea. It's hard to grasp it.
No,
but
it
helped
took
out a lot.
it took me about 9 months when I first joined to really get my head around this, and then when it really dawned on me, it's like, how could this not be a thing?
Yes.
I mean, it just makes so much sense. In the big picture thing, we're hoping that that aha moment hits people faster than me. So anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, you're the diehards for staying at such our long meetings, but our meetings usually just last till 9. We went a little bit longer this time, but I don't know, I think it's worth it. It's really hard to get everybody together, so we usually have a lot of speakers. I just wanted to let you know in July we have no meeting, and in August we have no meeting. In September, we're not sure if we're going to have a meeting. We might have a barbecue at someone's backyard, but we don't know yet. And so our definite our regular meetings will definitely be in October. It might also be in September. So Rick, do you have any other information for us?
Well, I'm rebuilding my deck, and so that will be the venue for our meeting in September. As long as my wife doesn't revolt against me, I think it should be.
What year did we have that gathering at your place? Was that 2 or 3 years
Before
ago?
COVID.
Okay, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we had
Yeah, we had a lot of people, a lot of officials there, and everybody had a good time.
Yes,
And
yes.
we're also doing our backyard if your deck is not ready.
Good. Get a backup deck.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, I think we need to meet, and so that would be a nice thing to do.
Yes, looking forward to it. Well, everybody have a great summer.
Yes, And if anybody wants to be in charge of looking for legislative things, let me know. I would really like to see that in our club. So thank you all for being here.
All right. Good night.
Good night.